I feel official. We are
Yes.
official. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Ask Briar. This is the time of the day, time of the week where we come to ask Briar the hard questions. I am the operator and the co host driving this conversation with Briar. Why do we ask Briar questions? Because we know that she's going to give us the answers and ask us the hard questions. That's why it is sexier than asking Google, asking Siri, or asking, I'm not going to mention her name, but you know who I'm talking about because Briar is going to slide in there and she's going to get inside your head. She's going to cause you to ask yourself the questions you haven't asked before and challenge you with the answers that you're already coming up with. This week, we are talking about something that I wasn't familiar with at all before I met Briar. This is about executive dysfunction, and we're going to be talking about how to make it functional. Not only today, but you're going to find out that today is going to be the sneak peek at a conversation that's going to lead to a clinic that's going to free thousands. We're going to pass it on over to Briar, and let's open us up with this conversation.
Goodness. This one's going to be a tough one to live up to, Stacy. So, executive function. I think we start with the definition, right? So, executive function is defined as the mental faculties that operate working memory, flexible thinking, self control, and emotional regulation. And I guess then we have to talk about what all of that means, right?
Right.
So, if I were to say to you, are you time blind? What would you say?
I'd say I don't know, but if it applies to something as to whether we started on time today or not, then I'd have to say that I
Like,
probably am
there is
along.
no better example of this, is there, than the fact that we were here on time.
We
We
were
were
here.
both here on time. Did we start
Absolutely.
on time? No. No, we did
No.
not. No, we did not. And it's one of those things. When I mention time blindness to people, they either know exactly what I'm talking about, or they're like, what do you mean? What's time blindness? Because you either live it or understand it, or you don't. Okay.
Mhm.
So, time blindness is functionally one of those things that is managed by executive function. This is a working memory thing. We have an internal chronometer. It either works or it does not. And the research on this is fascinating because people either can judge time within a reasonable degree of certainty, or they wildly overestimate or underestimate their amount of time. Some of this has to do with age, but more of it really has to do with your neurotype. And if you have ADHD in particular, you are more inclined to overestimate the amount of time you have or
Mhm.
underestimate the amount of time a task actually takes.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I'm super guilty of this. Oh, I got 15 minutes left. Here, let me do these 58 things beforehand. No,
Mhm.
no, no. It does not. Does not work that way.
Also guilty. here.
And what happens is our time blindness will lead us to overcommit, which will then lead us to missing deadlines, which will then lead us to shame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling like I can't do anything right,
Mm-hmm.
which then compounds the problem rather than solving the original issue of time blindness. The thing about executive dysfunction is it's a cascading failure of things. It always compounds. There's
Mm-hmm.
never one thing just going wrong. It's that you didn't get enough sleep, so you woke up late, so you had to drink coffee, so you didn't eat breakfast because you weren't hungry. So then you ate 5,000 calories at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, standing in the kitchen, stuffing it all in your face. And listen, guys, I'm as guilty on all of this as anyone else. And then you're like, oh, well, now it's all ruined. The whole day is ruined. The diet is ruined. The exercise plan is ruined. And I can't do anything right.
Absolutely, and that's what I referenced today when I posted, because I had to think about this. So just as I say with these episodes in co-hosting with Briar, I have to do homework. I can't come on and not be familiar with the topic, even if I wasn't familiar when she assigned the topic. So I had to, look at the definition myself and then look at some of the conversations around it. Now, I knew from our conversations before that time management was definitely one of those things, and that they affected a number of the neurodivergent areas. And I actually have a list of those, but that the ADHD was really, the group that, was like going to take pride with it. But the overwhelming feeling then that I can't do anything right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a conversation with someone this week in talking about the different things, and there was nothing particular that led the person to feeling that way. It was an overall culmination of the small things that just weren't going right, that didn't seem to be within their control. So that is exactly what we're talking about here. With all positive intentions, with a plan, with a planner, with alarms, with an iWatch, with people, with all of the things that you think would allow you to stay on track, in order, with priorities, they still did not avoid that overwhelming feeling of I just can't get it right.
Mm-hmm. And that's because structurally we have allowed for executive function to be seen as a personal failing.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's really problematic, especially because executive function, I mean, certainly this is not just neurodiverse people that deal with this, but we'll also see it with trauma,
Mm-hmm.
with grief, with general overwhelm in any normal situation. The ability to care for ourselves in a meaningful, significant way is the first thing that goes out the window.
Yes, yes. And we have a Facebook user that said cascading failure that you use is such an apt description. And then we also have Jasmine that said that time blind definitely is in her book. And she's learned to be obnoxiously early because of this. And she's working on something that needed to be turned in this morning. So, whew, we definitely hit that button. You have again taught me to do my homework. So, as we mentioned, that ADHD is one of the categories most recognized when you go to do the research. That category of neurodivergence comes up in association with. But it's not just that one. Let me give you the list, and I'm going to try to read through it as fast as possible. So we start out with the primary of ADHD, and these are actually in alphabetical order to create more function. ADHD, Alzheimer's and dementia, anemia, anxiety, autism, behavioral disorders, bipolar disorder, BPD, brain injury, chronic pain, complicated grief, connective tissue disorders, depression, dysautonomia, eating disorders, epilepsy, fibromyalgia, hoarding disorder,
Mm-hmm.
intellectual disability, IBS. So I get to add another one to my list. Learning disabilities, Lyme disease, ME, CFS, OCD, Parkinson, PTSD, schizophrenia, SPD, disorders, substance use disorders and addiction, synesthesia, and Tourette syndrome. All of those.
Synesthesia is how you pronounce that last one there.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Hmm.
All of those. So, Briar, tell me a little bit about the numbers. And you don't have to have exact ones, but I know this is something that you always touch on. Right now, in the audience, we can almost guarantee that 9 out of the 10 people watching, passing by, or that will replay this are going to be affected by something on that freaking big list.
Certainly in my audience, yes. But the numbers based on diagnoses, and this is where it gets dicey because of
Mm,
how difficult it is to obtain a diagnosis. 1 in 5 people suffer from some form of executive dysfunction. That's 20% of us. And again, that's with a diagnosis. If I had to guess, I'm actually putting that number much higher at 30 or 40%.
absolutely. I haven't been diagnosed, but I can rack off, I think, about 7 of those on the list myself. You know,
The average age of diagnosis for women for autism is 42. I got my diagnosis this year, so I'm a year ahead of the game.
wow.
Well, I
We've got,
turned 42 this year, so but I got it before I turned 42.
oh gosh, we have out in the audience. Here we go again. I have many of these. And then so many just talking about those different things. This is
Mhm.
not just ADHD. This is not just chronic depression. This is all of these things rolled up into here. And so the question is, if there are that many diagnoses that are affected by this disorder, how does the common corporate workspace address this?
Oh, Jesus.
And as a small business owner, what are the considerations? Now, I'm gonna before you answer, we're gonna do the little commercial here. I'm gonna let the commercial roll because you're actually going to bring this about next week into the following week from September 12th until September 23rd. Briar is actually going to be running the Executive Function Clinic. There are going to be a number of these topics that are going to be discussed. And not only will the topics be discussed, but solutions, methods, strategies will be given. So the link is right here. So head on over to briarharvey.com/clinic and go ahead and register for this event. This is a complimentary event. Why? Because we know that people need this information, but the strategies, the methods, the tools, the resources are going to be of an investment. Why? Because you need to invest in self. So now, Briar Harvey, if you'll go ahead and hit us back with your answer about how does corporate world and small business entities incorporate ways, methods, and even just acknowledgement of executive dysfunction.
Well, corporate doesn't acknowledge it much at all. In fact, something like 70 to 80% of entrepreneurs identify as having some diagnosis neurotype or self diagnosed neurotype, which means that we couldn't make it work in corporate life. Corporate didn't cut it for us. And so we had to go out and build our own thing.
Lauren's going to agree with you here. They don't. She said she had a mental breakdown and went on FMLA. That was
And
the option.
that's only an option for a company larger than 100 employees, right? FMLA has some pretty strict requirements to even utilize it as a service, as everyone who's ever had a child can attest to, right? And when you consider that executive function is primary to getting the job done on a schedule, on time, it seems almost criminal that corporations don't make an effort to accommodate the needs of their employees in this way.
Lauren's going to back that up again and say, yes, this is true. She went back to work for 2 days. They treated her like shit and she quit.
And now, because I know Lauren and I've been watching her journey this past year, and her consulting company has grown, it's thriving, it's amazing. And she did that, at least in part, by building a business that has allowed for her to care for herself. It's not perfect, and it's never gonna be perfect, because the ways in which we internalize that corporate structure, the grind, this is a question I regularly frequently ask. Do you work weekends? Do you take weekends off? Why? What are your days and times off? What does that mean to you structurally? Because working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, isn't something you have to do if you own your own business. There's no reason why those have to be the hours that you work when you are self-employed or a freelancer. And yet, how many do you know, Stacy? Right? Monday through Friday, baby. And not 9 to
Absolutely.
5 either. They're like 9 to 8, 9 to 9. I'm
Yeah.
looking at you and pointing.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that the stretched and extended hours are definitely there. Well, there are different reasons as to why they're there, that have something to do with the other disorders that play into it. Yet, from having your counsel, I do have designated days off, may not be observed all the time, but designated days off. And they actually happen to be Thursday and
Mhm.
Sunday. And why is that? Because if there are things that I need to get done in corporate America during business hours, I need to have a day during the week in order to facilitate that. I also have clients that do work Monday through Friday and need servicing on Saturday. So, to accommodate the clients as well as myself, I chose those days off out of consideration. But had I not been told that it was okay to flex, or I will say no, because that's going to be another conversation that I want to have with you, flex versus flow, for me to flow my days off as I chose, I would have still been saying, well, everybody in the internet world expects me to work Monday through Friday again. Looks like we've got follow up from Laura as well. So these things play into it. She can't work a regular job anymore. Yeah, mentally, she probably wasn't supposed to work the regular job anyway.
Well, the research on this is pretty clear at this point in time. 32 hours seems to be about the maximum number of hours, and that's hard maximum number of hours where we are creatively in flow and able to sustain the work.
Absolutely, which is why that is usually the standard in most states of what they consider to be full time employment. There are some secrets that this is what we're talking about, you all. Secrets that are natural to Ask Briar, which the systems are using in the backline for the guidelines and the standards, but they're not explained. Has anyone asked why do they consider 32 hours between 32 and 40 to be the standard for full-time employment?
Well, here's the
Why?
thing. 32 hours is 4 8-hour days. So what you should actually be working is 4 8-hour days or 5 6-hour days. And I think that the issue, especially in the United States, comes into the way in which we pay for work, right? If you're getting paid hourly, then it's not enough to survive on, usually, at 32 hours a week. If you're getting paid a salary, there is an expectation of minimum number of hours, even if they aren't required for the job. So what we've done is we've taken these 32 hours and said, okay, this is the number, but instead of treating it as the maximum that it is supposed to be, it's been treated as the minimum bare standard. And we recorded an episode a couple weeks ago about quiet quitting, but this is where this comes into play. I'm not quiet quitting a job if I'm actually doing the job that I am paid to do in the number of hours that it should take, and not taking on any additional jobs or assignments above and beyond my job description. But I think that we really get ourselves into trouble here because, again, we've taken that 32-hour minimum standard and internalized it. And so as a society, when we tie our value, our personal worth to our productivity, that means that we are only valuable if we are producing.
Okay, so now you've slid and you opened the door on the small business side of things and actually talked about an advantage that you can take if you are working for yourself as an entrepreneur or small business. I'm gonna go through these exact 8 functions, executive functions, and then I want you to speak to how owning your own business will allow you more control over these areas. So the first one was the planning and time management that you mentioned at the top, the working memory, so the ability to use information held in the memory to complete a task. Organization, the ability to develop and use systems to keep track of materials and information. Task initiation, the ability to
Oh, that's a
start
big one for
and
us.
finish
Mhm.
tasks without procrastinating. We can't even finish it much anyway. Flexibility, the ability to adapt the changing conditions by revising plans or changing strategies. Emotional control, the ability to manage feelings to achieve goals and complete tasks. Self monitoring, the ability to view and evaluate oneself. And then self control, the ability to stop and think before acting.
So listen, that last one, you see it when somebody does a Facebook Live and then starts crying about how much money they're not making. I feel terrible saying that, but it's especially in this economy and this market, we've really seen a lot of people struggling. And because they are struggling financially, they're not taking care of themselves in the way that they normally would, which means they lack impulse control.
Mm-hmm.
And when I lack impulse control, I'm going to do something that seems like it's a good idea at the time without talking it through with my people first.
Mm.
And I recommend that everyone should have a therapist. Everyone should have a trusted confidant. Everyone should have a group chat where you can go and say, "Hey, should I do this?" And they can say, "Nah, bestie, nah. Nah, don't do that." When you lack impulse control, all of these things seem like a good idea at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really unfortunate because I've watched, I mean, fairly large businesses and business owners within the last month. I mean, several of them. This is a thing, who have done irreparable harm to their business because they have been talking about their finances or their personal lives in a way that will, over time, not reflect well on them.
Mm-hmm.
And this, the thing about vulnerability is we've used it as a marketing tool, right? So using my personal story to sell my personal brand is a thing that we all do now. I certainly am not exempt from this. I talk about my diagnosis, I talk about my children's diagnosis, I talk about my stillborn child, right? Like there's real trauma, loss, things that I use in my personal story to make the information that I have to share relatable in some way.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we really have to talk about teaching from scars and not wounds, though,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And while I will never be healed from any of these things, I certainly have had enough experience with them in my life to be able to talk about them with distance. And when we are deeply in the thick of things, and we lack that impulse control, and we lack the ability to kind of see how that decision will affect us on a longer time horizon, we're really doing a lot of harm, not just to our businesses, but to ourselves. Um,
Absolutely.
it's really unfortunate that this is where we're at right now. When, and I think part of the problem really comes down to the fact that self development is treated as another to do list, it's another box to check off. I certainly can check a box that I've gotten my 8 hours of sleep and that I followed my macros today, right?
Hmm.
That I worked out for X number of minutes. And I didn't do that. Let's be very clear. Of all the things that Briar struggles with, it is exercise. I did
Hmm.
not work out for X
Hmm.
number of minutes. And when we make personal development a to-do list, it is the first thing that falls off when our lives become urgent. When there is a state of urgency about something else, it is the easiest thing in the world to abandon those 8 hours of sleep, those macros.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So, we're going to bring up again, while we find this topic to be important and that more people need this information, there's failure to have conversation about it. First of all, with self and identifying some of these things, the diagnoses that you heard listed below, and understanding if you have those diagnoses, there's a possibility that this dysfunction plays into your life on a regular. Now you have to make the choice to actually, after identifying it, to choose to do something about it. So, we're going to offer you the opportunity to actually do something about it, to find out more information about these functions themselves. So Briar has gone through the trouble, and this is something that we really have supported her in doing, because her voice alone is getting out here, and we're trying to make it heard through Ask Briar and the other conversations, but she is bringing other women to the table to have this conversation. Right now, if you want to learn more about the topic and the clinic itself, this is the Executive Function Clinic, and you can find it at briarharvey.com/clinic. I'm going to give you a few of the conversations that are going to be had during this actual clinic. The dates again are from September 12th to September 23rd. Yes, for 2 weeks, not one, but 2 weeks. It's just that important. And there are those many topics to talk about. So on Monday the 12th, Briar Harvey, her own self, is going to open up this clinic and tell us a little bit more. Give us the definition again. Make sure these things are resonating with you, and let you determine whether you feel you need more information and when you're going to plug in. The agenda's already been laid out, so you can choose what days, because again, this is not hardcore. We understand that flexibility is needed with this process. On Tuesday the 13th, there's going to be a faith clinic. Then on Wednesday the
No,
14th,
play clinic with
oh,
Faith Clark.
got you. I'm sorry about that. So see, that's what happens when you have on your blues and not your real glasses. So then we're gonna move on to the next day. Hey, so go ahead, Briar. Give us the rundown then, because I don't want to mess up anything else. Because
I
we're
know
talking
the
about
Prince is small. I know the Prince is small.
yeah.
Wednesday the 14th, I'm going to be talking to Michelle Casey about diet. I'm really excited about that conversation. I'm just going to stop saying that because I'm really excited about all of these
Mhm.
conversations. On Thursday the 15th, I'm talking to Laureen Malley about the neurochemical stuff in your brain. Friday, I still have not asked her how to pronounce her name. I think it's Brigitte Bunger for sleep. On
Ooh.
Monday, the 19th, I'm going to be talking to my pal Jordan Manny about the types of rest, which is different from sleep, y'all. So it needed a whole nother day. And then Tuesday, the 20th, you and I will be talking about planning. We
Yeah.
have included in the workbook some bonus planners for you to start piecing things together in a way that works for you. On Wednesday, the 21st, I'm going to be talking about discipline. And then on Thursday, the 22nd, I have Sarah Rhiannon. She's going to be talking about unshaming yourself. And I'm really excited about that one because I feel like
Hmm.
shame is such a big component of this for all of us. It's that guilt we feel about not being able to do it right. And I really, if you come to no other, please come to that one. Let's talk about how to make things feel a little easier in our bodies. Finally, last but certainly not least, on the second Friday, I have the incomparable Jasmine Murphy, who's going to be walking us through exercise and personal health, fitness development. And again, I really personally struggle with this one. So I wanted to make sure that we had Jasmine because the work that she's done on herself over the last few years in this arena has just been absolutely mind blowing. I'm so proud to be able to watch her grow and take care of herself. And I think that ultimately that's what this comes down to. Figuring out what you personally need, what you personally struggle with, and the ways to create scaffolding that is supportive. For me, sleep has always been a struggle, and so it is one of my highest priorities. I have apps which I will be recommending. We have some questions for you to take to your doctor to talk about why sleep is hard for you. There's so many things that you can do for yourself in these things that are probably not the things that you think that you need to do. When we talk about diet, when we talk about exercise, when we talk about sleep, at this point in time, there are so many rigid definitions of the one true way. And that's probably why you struggle.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
you and I can talk about David Allen for hours and hours and hours, right? Because when it comes to planning, either that works for you or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work for you, what then?
Hmm.
Are you just a getting things done failure for the rest of your life? And part of that really, I mean, it's in the language. It's we talk about miracle mornings. Well, if that's not what I do in the morning, is my morning any less of a miracle? The language that we are using to frame these conversations matter a great deal, and it's deeply internalized in ways that we often don't recognize. So the biggest part, and probably what I'll be talking most about in the introduction piece, is how you frame the language that you are using on yourself. How you talk about you to you
Hmm.
is fundamental aspect of self-care that I mean we are our own worst critic. We are all relentless about how we judge ourselves and what we have done or not done.
Yeah.
And that's key. Until you can learn how to frame these voices in a nicer way for yourself, you're going to beat yourself up because you're not doing it right. And it doesn't matter what it is. You're not doing it right because somebody else said this is the way and I can't do that. So I'm not doing it right.
Hmm. And the beautiful thing about it is it's actually free.
Mhm.
We look at all of the resources, and many times we say, I can't do that because I can't afford it. I can't afford to go here. I can't afford that equipment. I can't afford that piece of advice that you're going to get on day one is free.
It's fucking
So
free, y'all.
you
Be
can
nice
apply
to
it right out the
yourself.
gate.
And listen, that's the hardest part. The being nice to yourself first always is the hardest part. So I want you to approach the next 2 weeks with an open mind. How can you look at the ways in which you have been caring for yourself and make it better? How can you look at the ways in which you have been missing things and frame it not as neglect, but as an unfulfilled need? It really, really, really is about the words that you use and how you are talking to yourself about yourself. And I cannot emphasize this enough. The more you believe that you are worthy of care, the more you will care for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is usually where it starts. You'll find out that many people that have this struggle, it's because they've been told different than that. They've been told by a parent, they've been told by a family member, they've been told by a boss, they've been told by a boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse. And those words have been impactful. They have lived with those people on a day to day basis, and not having a mirror to reflect what you know, and especially as a small child, you haven't instilled this in yourself. As a teenager, you're questioning this about yourself, and then as an adult, you're reevaluating this again. So if that's not instilled in you, then you are only using the voices of others and the reflections that they send back to you. So until you can establish these processes, these methods to be able to establish that core and be able to hold on to it, you're always going to revert to the words of somebody else. Yeah. So come get those words on Monday. Come get
Come get
set up.
better ones, new ones, words that feel different in your body. And that's what all of this is about. Executive function is how we feel in our bodies. It's about safety. It's
Mm.
about care. It's about comfort. And those things matter a great deal. And we have overlooked them to our detriment.
All right, so as we begin to close this out, Briar, we've told everybody that there is the clinic coming, and you're saying that there are resources that are going to be available. Tell us a little bit about the resources because we can get them there now. We should be able to get them there. So if you all are out there and you've seen this, this is actually this is actually being spread out throughout different locations, mostly on Facebook. You see this, please share this. If you think that there's somebody that needs to hear this, share it in Messenger, share it on your own profile. And if you have a tribe, please share it inside. This is how we're getting the word out. It is word of mouth right now. So, Briar, just tell us, give us a hint. Don't give it to us all, but what are some of the things that people will find in this workbook? Because we understand as entrepreneurs, they're looking for value if they're going to exchange currency for this document. So, what are some of the things that are inside?
So we definitely have some planners, like I said, because you need, if you are learning how to plan, you need more than one to choose from. I have several free downloads from a number of sources so you can kind of put things together in your own space, way, and time. I've got a list of questions for you to take to your doctor about sleep. I have a list of dietary and exercise recommendations, and I have a very long list of personal app recommendations for a variety of things. Finally, to round this all out, I've got some things for you to think about. What I know about executive function is that it takes time. You're not going to be able to suddenly reinvent your routine in a day, and trying to do so is not going to work. You'll only end up back where you started a week from now going, I can't do anything right.
Feeling a
So,
little shame.
mm,
Yeah. Hmm.
building routines are the work of lifetime. And I want you to really be able to assess what your current strengths and weaknesses are, and the ways in which those things can be used to support each other. So, if you are already a good sleeper, how can you lean into that? How can you look at sleep debt and bring it down even lower so that your energy is better, so that you can go out and do the things that you want to do? If your diet is already pretty decent, how can you fine tune that? How can you make better nutritional choices that will allow you to get the peak food energy that you are looking for, that will allow you to, there's going to be a theme here, go out and do the things? If you're already good at the self talk, you probably don't need me. But if you're already good at that, how can you lean into that and allow yourself to bolster your way through the things that you are struggling with? How can you positive talk your way into taking a walk outside? Let me know, because I really need to hear that one. What we're looking for here are figuring out our strengths and our weaknesses and really finding the balance. If self-care is the work of a lifetime and creating those routines is the work of a lifetime, what has to happen now, and what can happen 6 months from now? What can happen a year from now? What can I let go of for a time while I focus on these other things? Obviously, for me, the answer has been exercise for a lot of years. It was not a priority so that I could do the emotional work that needed to be done.
Hmm.
And I recognize, because I recognize the ways in which all of these things are interrelated, that exercise would have been an absolute benefit to me a lot of the way through this process.
Hmm.
And because it was something that I got stuck on so much, it was a thing that I decided to consciously let go of for a time, that I would come back to at some point in time later, after I had gotten these other things in a row. Once my sleep was better, once my neurochemicals were in a slightly better place, once my diet was improved, then I could come back and look at exercise again. And in fact, that's where I'm personally at right now. I've downloaded some apps. I figured out what kind of exercise I like to do and what I don't like to do. I'm figuring out ways to incorporate the things that I like to do in little small ways that are almost impossible to say no to. Playing with my kids for 5 minutes gets me off my butt, and exercising. And I don't want to listen to him whine about how I'm not playing. So, like, it's a win.
Hmm.
Figure out what your win conditions are. When it comes to your routines, your habits, building those things over time, figure out what a win is, and then be willing to let other things go for right now. That's what we're looking at. And I want you to be able to find your wins in and amongst the things that you're struggling with. because the only way this is ever going to get better is small, sustainable victories.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for adding that into the conversation, Briar. Again, if you've joined us since we have made the announcement or spoken to this, we're talking about the Executive Function Clinic that's going on September 12th through September 23rd. Yes, 2 weeks, not one. You can head on over to briarharvey.com/clinic to get all of the details. There are resources available inside the workbook. It is a companion workbook. You know yourself that if you attend these workshops, taking notes is one thing, but some of us, based on the fact that we're neurodivergent, cannot receive the information, retain the information, and be able to apply the information afterwards. So what Briar's done is taking that all in consideration. There is recordings available. Most of us can't be available for all of the sessions to watch live either. This is 10 days of dominant, I tell you, strategic women that are just going to deliver.
So excited.
So make sure that you register and that you get the companion workbook and that you have the replays so that you can catch what you missed, that you can go back and replay those things that you needed to hear again. And we also know that some of you have family members in the house, and some of your being able to move forward with this is going to take the support of a family member, of a friend. So having that information available to share and show them becomes important as well. And so we're just going to say that this is about raising the community's awareness to the whole concept of the struggle, and then making sure that people are getting the information that it's available. Share this with a friend, share this with a family member. And as you begin to master these functions yourself, make sure that you are influencing others in a positive, not forceful way, but use your influence to influence those around you, as Briar has done with the circle of women that are already part of this and now extending that hand to you. So, with that being said, Briar Harvey, we've enjoyed having this conversation about executive function and the clinic that you have coming up. So, you can go ahead and close this conversation now.
When we talk about support, one of the things that is most fundamental to being able to receive support from our village, from our people, is the ability to talk about it with clarity, with conciseness. And you got to do that for yourself first. You have to be able to define what your needs are, what they look like, and why you need them for yourself before you can ever define that for anyone else. So I really invite you to come and figure out what those needs are, and then you'll be able to be so much more clear about what you need and how people can support you going forward. Thank you all so much for being here today. This has been a delight. Stacy, as always, this has been Ask Briar, and we will see you next time. Bye, y'all.